welcome to No Movies in Hell.
Hi everyone, I'm Claus Scott, and today we are reviewing Women Talking, film directed by Sarah Polley.
This was kind of a downer, but I thought it was great. And it wasn't really, the subject matter is kind of a downer, but I thought the movie itself was really very inspirational.
Yeah. What were your initial thoughts going in?
I didn't know a ton about it. I knew that Frances McDormand was in it, so I was sold on that. But I also really liked the other people who are in it. Jessie Buckley, awesome. Claire Foy, Rooney Mara. I was in no matter what. I didn't know what it was about at all. So going in, I was surprised, but I liked it.
Yeah. I remember seeing like a trailer or two on it, and it looked interesting. Didn't know what it was about. And then it just like disappeared. I couldn't find it in theaters. I have a screener. That's how I was able to see it. And yeah, I was impressed by the cast. Yeah, Frances McDormand, of course, Jessie Buckley. I'm a Buckhead, part of her stan, I guess. And then it was just, because you don't know much, I just started doing basically, let's give them something to talk about, except for replacing the words with women talking within my household. Yeah, and then watched it and was like, this is very dark and depressing on the subject matter, just like you. But I was like, oh, this is kind of reminds me of 12 Angry Men in the way that they need to deliberate within the women in this colony or community around what they're going to do as a corrective action or solution to a problem, and it's like an endemic problem to the men in this colony, which is weird that they call it a colony, but I still didn't get a glimpse of like what type of colony they were, even if they were like, if this was like in the US, if this was real. And then, as it starts to get revealed, it's like, oh, it's very much set in the US. It's set in, I think, 2010.
Because
So
he's
not that
calling for
far
the
off.
2010 census.
Mm-hmm. And it's like you would never know because they're just so isolated from the world. And I think that comes up too, is like, how are they going to survive if they don't understand how things are in the outer world? So you stay, you fight, you leave is what they are all voting on.
Going into it, I wasn't sure when it was placed in time, so I was glad they had the 2010 census guy come by. That was very helpful. The other thing is, I read after I saw the movie that this is based on something that really happened in Canada.
Oh, wow.
So it was fictionalized, like their reaction to it and like the voting and the like deciding to stay or leave. But it was actually, there's a case where 8 men in this Mennonite community were accused of raping like over 100 women.
Oh my gosh.
So that lends a certain gravitas to it, which I'm glad I didn't know going in.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, learning it afterwards was interesting, and changes a little bit of the way you think about the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Because it's like, from an outsider's perspective, it's like, well, if this is happening, you need to just like get out, right? But I think that we have resources with which to help or to understand, like, what are our options. And if you only have things that are passed down through faith or very limited like education, because these women weren't educated, like they didn't know how to read or write, which blew my mind. And it was like pictures, like you have to draw pictures in order to communicate, and then they needed someone to write or dictate everything that has happened in these deliberations.
I don't know how to say his last name, but Ben
Yes.
did a great job
Oh yeah.
in that role, which was a tough role. The whole thing made me think of like how small towns operate. In a small town, even if you don't like someone, you still have to deal with them. It's not like you're not going to see them. They're around and their families are around. So the women who were in the hayloft, they were there with their mothers, if their mothers were still alive, and they brought their daughters with them, even though their daughters were too really young. Some of them were too young to really have an opinion. Like they were not paying attention, they were braiding each other's hair.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you have a problem with someone else, and then how does that change the way you interact with them? Because you're going to keep running into them. And how does it change the way you interact with their family?
Right. The very onset, there were very clear lines of division, and there was almost no negotiation of like, look, and then you started to bring in kind of the conditional, what if this, what if that, and not all men. Okay, so where do we draw the line? And then when you start to create these internal boundaries, and then they go back to their macro of, well, you were supposed to be home at a certain time, like these expectations with the men, then it becomes increasingly clear of this can't happen. So there are many forces at play over the course of the time, but I really liked how, this was very much the environment was very much centered in the barn. The focus was mainly on them talking about what to do instead of more of the like visual, because obviously there's a lot of pain and a lot of suffering involved.
It was very play-like. I thought that this
It
could
was.
be a play tomorrow. Like they wouldn't have to change that much for it to be a play. Let's go to the slides. All right, so 26 and 23. Acting, same. Cinematography, you gave it a 3. And costumes, you gave it a 3.
Yeah, well, I thought maybe the costumes were just, of the time. Once you realize like what year it was, and I felt like they did a pretty good job of staying true to this community. I really like the cinematography, the way that the storytelling outside of like the events leading up to when discussing a lot of what's happening, I thought it was done very well. Even like there were these certain filters of haze, shots of the external shots with one of the women and, the children, and how they are like entertaining the children, and how she or they actually wouldn't even speak, but would step forward and actually take care of the children and make sure that they were okay, blocking them essentially from being in the barn and hearing about what's going on and the emotions that, and storytelling that are going on there.
I did like the storytelling that was happening, and it really helped bring up, because I don't know about you, but I was thinking during most of the movie, which was not tremendously long, right? It was like a relatively short movie. But I was thinking, like, how are they drugging them? Like, if they don't use, like, are they injecting them, or like, how are they not able to realize that someone has broken into their house and before they get sedated, however that's happening? And then finally, in the end, you see it's the sprayer.
Yep.
I thought that was great. The costumes I thought were good for what they were, but they didn't seem overly complex. So for a drama, I felt like they were good, but average good. Same with hair and makeup, no jewelry. Production quality, you gave a 3.
Yes.
I like the visual of them all lining up at the end.
And
getting ready.
With the buggies and the horse, yeah. I wish there were more like Frances McDormand in this film.
I know. And I know it's fictionalized, and but like you see that line of like them getting ready on the road, and you think, well, they're not going to be allowed to take those buggies and horses. Like they're going to come for those.
Oh
They
yeah,
might not be able to get you to come back, but they're going to get those horses.
Yeah.
Reader's choice 3, story 3. We both agree on that. Soundtrack and special effects, same. Do you have anything to plug in this episode?
Yeah, I don't have anything to plug. I think we're winding down films from 2022. What about yourself? You have anything to plug?
I don't, but hopefully I will soon. So we'll make that a goal for 2023. Have something to plug in future episodes. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.